Our first look at creative writing, we're going to look at showing and not telling. And what that means is that instead of just coming out with a statement, we use a bit of inferencing. We use a bit of talk around the edges, and we let our audience fill in the gaps. As an example, we talked about, instead of saying it was raining, we'd say, I pulled on my raincoat, grabbed my umbrella, and tightened my scarf around my neck before I stepped outside. You're not actually saying it's raining, but you've given enough clues for your audience to figure out that if it's not raining, at least the weather's bad enough for you to need that stuff. So that's what we're going to do a bit with our writing. And the first thing that we looked at was, our first example was that we're sick. I'm sick. And we also looked at the different types of narration. We looked at first-person narration, and we looked at third-person narration, and we looked at the advantages and disadvantages of both of those. But we did a little bit of a brainstorm about what sorts of things would you notice if you were sick. How would you feel? You'd be sniffing, you'd be blowing your nose, you'd have a sore throat. But of course, if we're trying to figure out how it would be to show a sore throat without saying, I've got a sore throat, you might be taking cough lollies. You're real sick, you might be in a hospital bed, you might be getting talked to by a nurse, you'd be taking meds, and other sort of flu type things, aches and pains, sweats and chills. So these were the brainstorm things. So we looked at what we'd do and came up with, putting these points into a little piece of writing to show but not tell that you were sick. And so here is an example of that. Can I get you anything else? Asked the nurse through her mask as she hurried past. Another blanket, I whispered. Too late. I reached out for the glass of water, took a quick sip, wincing as the cold water hit the back of my throat. I fumbled around on the table next to the bed for the box of strepsils. I used a bunch of tissues to first wipe the sweat beads off my face and then blow my nose loudly. Wishing it was already time for my next lot of Panadol, I shivered and clutched the thin hospital blanket and sheet. So that's our first-person narration. If we're going to change this to third-person narration, we could take the same piece of writing and just slightly adjust it. Can I get you anything else? The nurse asked John through her mask as she hurried past. Another blanket, he whispered. Too late for the nurse to hear. John reached out for the glass of water, took a quick sip, wincing as the cold water hit the back of his throat. He fumbled around on the table next to the bed for the box of tissues. After taking two, he used a bunch of tissues to first wipe the sweat beads off his face and then blow his nose loudly. He wished it was already time for his next lot of Panadol. Shivering, he clutched the thin hospital blanket and sheet, trying to get a little more warmth. Okay, not very much different, and probably in this case just as effective as the first person. So that was our first bit of stuff that we were looking at.